Welcome to the Art of Healing. Today it's my pleasure to introduce Yutka Freeman, who is a practicing psychologist, and her area of specialty is Enneagrams. Hi Yutka, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Can you just tell us straight up what an Enneagram is and how it works?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's got a very ancient history, which is fascinating, but basically it is a circle with 9 points, and each of those points represents the discrete structure of our ego. So there are 9 different ways in which we view the world and respond to the world. And that's what an Enneagram tells us at its very, very basic fundamental level.
Okay, so the work that you're doing is you have consultations with people that come to you specifically about the ego. How do they come to you?
Yeah, nobody ever really comes specifically about their ego. They usually come about their partner or their financial problem or an issue. But very soon we discover that stuff is happening all the time to all of us, and a lot of that is about, well, how am I going to deal with this stuff? When we look at Enneagram, and when we look at the 9 different meaning-making styles, we start to understand that we are pretty much locked into a particular way of viewing the world and then reacting to it. And once we identify that, I often see the world through this limited lens, and then I have a reaction to that in a limited way, we start to see that we're living on a very narrow band of existence. And of course we're recreating our reality because we're looking at it through the same distorted set of contact lenses. And so in discovering our Enneatype, that really helps us to see that the distortion, both emotional and cognitive, and even somatic, even body distortions, get fixated and then calcified in a particular way from very young, actually. So, we sort of develop a way of being in the world to survive our early childhood to a lesser and greater extent. And that particular fortress we become imprisoned in. And we don't even realise that we're stuck in that particular way of being.
So what are the 9 points on the circle?
Well, they're numbered from 1 to 9. None of them are any better than any other. You can't move around and say, oh, well, I was a 1, but now I'm an 8, and then I'm a 3. It's not context dependent. So I'll show up as a particular type across the board, and that type will be my core type. Now, there are divisions which are too complex to go into, but everyone has a core type, and that core type will kind of be your Achilles heel. That's the one you need to know the most about.
Okay, so can you tell us what those 9 types are, please?
Oh my goodness, I could.
I
could, yeah. No, I can roll through it very quickly. But the one thing I have to say from the outset is that your type is determined by your motivation, not your behaviour.
Okay. Actually, I just want to interrupt here because as you're talking, I'm thinking of the Myers-Briggs, which some people might be familiar with, which is where you also get defined in terms of whether or not you're a thinker or a sensing person, and it's sort of quite well known. So that's why I'm actually interested in what those definitions are within. And I wouldn't mind actually if you can share with us as well who developed the Enneagram. If we can just do that very briefly.
It's a big history. I'll start with the development of the Enneagram. We are tracing it back to about the 3rd century into the Nile Delta, where the Christian mystics, particularly a guy called Pontus of Evagrius, he was a scribe, a sort of Christian mystic, those people that have gone into the desert to live a monastic life to have a direct experience of God, and lots of meditation practices and things like that. They were already scribing the Enneatypes then, And then it sort of got very much linked into the vices, you know, envy and pride and all of the main sins, if you like. And then it has quite an enormous history. We find it in the Sufis. You know, the Armenian philosopher Gurdjieff was taught about the Enneagram on his travels from the Sufi Brotherhood. And then more recently, there was a Bolivian mystic called Oscar Ichazo who downloaded the Enneagram and brought it to the West, took about 100 great minds from Esalen into the Chilean desert to a place called Arica and ran lots of programs there to refine it. From that then came Claudia Naranjo, a Chilean psychiatrist who married it to what we know about common psychology now.
It's fascinating hearing
and it goes
from
on
all different places in the world, so it's actually quite sort of developed quite universally in a way.
Gurdjieff, the philosopher, used to say you can put away all your books if you study this one symbol. It has everything in it, and we have sacred geometry in the Enneagram. It's a very, very big piece of work, and what we're looking at today is just a tiny tip of the iceberg around the personality.
So I still want to come back to what those 9 points are.
Each type has a tendency to lock down in a particular way and really just funnel vision in, which is not expansive. So, and of course there are high sides to the type as well. For example, type 1, the perfectionist. Everything is black and white, no greys. You're either right or wrong. Okay, so they're the pedants of the Enneagram. They want to do it all absolutely perfectly. If you want a job done with precision, get a 1, right? But why do they do that? You know, some of us are perfectionists, but we're not a type 1. What makes a person a type 1?
Okay.
So the type, let me tell you, the type 1 often comes from a family where there was quite a bit of criticalness, and they were the responsible child, so they had to get it right, and they can get quite rigid around that, so they can get quite controlling, and they can even get into what we call a bit of mood bullying, you know, where everyone's on eggshells because they're all trying to get it right, because that person believes that they are responsible for it all being right.
Okay, so my next question then would be is, once again, like the Myers-Briggs and Ayurvedic, or whenever you're getting tight, I would imagine that you possibly have parts of different types, that you're not just one particular type, is that correct?
You have different behaviours of all the types. That's why I said, like, you can be another type and be a perfectionist, but for a different reason.
Right. So it must be amazing from your point of view. It's quite complex to actually define it. So coming back to a person coming to see you, how do they come to see you anyway? I mean, I've just come back from a counselling conference and, discussing all these different, psychotherapy, psychology, counselling. Now we have what you're doing, and we've got coaching, I mean, if I'm a layperson who's smart enough to think I've got mental issues, how do I decide who I'm going to go and see?
Well, I'm a psychotherapist, and I don't just use Enneagram. So Enneagram is one of the tools in my toolkit. But I find the more I study Enneagram, the more I can link it back into attachment theory, early childhood issues. I can use Enneagram psychodramatically. I can use it with Gestalt. It's not a mode of working. It's a particular underlying system, if you like. But again, I'm often informed by Enneagram. For example, Enneagram is a trilectic system, which means everything divides into 3. It also divides into 7, but we won't go there now. But it is more obviously a trilectic system. So you've got people who are a body type. So their wisdom's in their belly. And so with those sorts of people, I might use a more action method, like psychodrama or constellation work or something. Then we've also got on the Enneagram the thinking types. So those people, they trust their mind So I have to, address the cognitive issues very strongly, because once they understand something, then it can filter down through and they can relax the whole system. The third type on the Enneagram is a feeling type. So then the emotional expression is important for them. So they need to be able to, get a felt sense of it emotionally, and then they open to the system.
So would it be correct to say that you use an Enneagram as the foundational sort of analysis method?
Yeah, I actually do these days, and I know people are so nervous about being, pigeonholed and typed, and, what if they get mistyped and then their whole thinking gets constellated around something that's incorrect. And look, I absolutely agree. I think we need to be really cautious, and that's why I say to people, when I do an Enneagram typing, first of all, it's an inside job. You tell me. I ask a whole lot of discerning questions, but basically, you know your type at the end of the day, and it's a conversation between us. It's not me telling you.
So it's almost like you're helping a person reveal themselves to them.
Exactly.
Which is wonderful. That sounds great.
Yeah, it is like that. And to understand, but why? But what is it under that would make you do that? What is your core fear, if you like, that makes you want to, behave in that particular way? And it's not all bad, because, for example, the perfectionist, since we're sort of in the type 1, these people have built up an enormous skill set around doing something really, really well. Well, we don't want to dish that. That's great. So what we're saying is keep the good bits and gently melt the other bits.
So in terms of people coming to see you, and actually how long this takes, because I mean, you can talk about awareness, and actually, they say that's the first step to making a change, but then it's a long process, isn't it?
Well, it depends on what you're asking, what the this is, because if you're coming along because you've got a specific issue, then we work on the issue. If you want to do more work after that, you recontract. Other people want to grow consciously. Well, there's no place where we're ever done, but there's certainly a place where we move into different fields with it. Like one of my beliefs is sort of apart from Enneagram now, but one of my beliefs is that I run a lot of groups, and so I'll see clients for a period of time, and sometimes much longer, and sometimes very, very briefly. But I will try and bring them into some of the ongoing work, because I believe that we live in community, and I believe that most of the best work that happens is done when we're in a field that is a collective field of benevolence. And a lot gets healed there, a lot gets challenged there, but it's closer to the real world than just the one-on-one. Now, I think the one-on-one is important, and I think it has a slightly different function. But for me, I think there's a lot more group work happening than there ever was before, and a lot more long-term sane people in the group work happening. Because it's easy to go into a workshop, feel fabulous and leave. But what about the integration? So we have a lot of initiatory work, which is fabulous. But we also need the integrative work, where we face the same people month after month, and see how those relationships develop over time, because that's what happens in the real world, and that's what we struggle with.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm finding that extremely fascinating. Hopefully we'll get to talk with Jutta again. But at the moment, thank you very much for joining us at The Art of Healing, and I think we all know more about Enneagrams, and thank you.
Pleasure.